So I'm very excited to be the discussant this evening. Like I mentioned, my time in this level of hospitality, I come from food and beverage, but not hotels. One of the things that I learned very early is that there are very few hoteliers who are women. And I think that we can really start this conversation off much like Ruby Bridges, like your presence alone could be disruptive. And maybe we can talk a little bit about entering the world for you, what that might have been like as an innkeeper, as a woman of color coming into that space, what type of resistance that both of you ran into just saying that this is what I want to do.
Well, I didn't have any thought of how else to enter other than as a woman of color. So I don't, because I am a bootstrapper and pretty much self-financed my project, I didn't really have to ask for permission or assistance from many people. And my community, for the most part, was happy to see us come. Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, I'm from DC, so coming there, folks were pretty protective of the community, and my initial reception was not a warm one. Unfortunately, 400 years of baggage led people to believe that I was a front for someone, which is really crazy, and painful, because to think it's kind of like Santa Claus, some big white man gets all the credit for all the money I saved up to buy my kid toys all year. It was, there were lots of shoes I couldn't buy, lots of places I couldn't go because I was bootstrapping trying to buy this property. And while, $225,000 didn't seem like a lot of money, it was for me at the time to be able to do it. And I was able to really rely on things like bartering to make it happen. I got all my plumbing and electrical work done by a guy whose daughter was getting married. I was like, we can have the wedding here, fix those pipes and those wires. And that was a lot of how I got it done. I had to deal with, again, that 400 years where, there were some who said, we don't want any business in our residential neighborhood, which was really unfortunate because, we need commerce if we're going to become a self-sustaining community. And so through the years, we were able to break that down. As I went into each of the additional communities where we now are, I learned from that. And when I would go before the community boards and talk about what I wanted to do, I certainly would scratch my head a couple of times and say, I'm not sure, y'all probably know better than me, how should we? So that buy-in and not that assumption that I knew and understood and here I was coming, but what is it that you guys want? How can we do this? Even started to name, again, the rooms are named in Cape May after like anybody who was anybody of color. It's like who, okay, and then all of their kids and grandkids who now have a room named after their grandma, they're like, don't mess with her. My grandma got a room at that place, And so that kind of community buy-in became critical. So I can't say that I've had any adverse reaction to the fact that I'm black or that I'm a woman. Probably the Woolworth estate up in the Poconos was the hardest. And it didn't really become that way until the presidency changed. And people showed who they were. I didn't really know a lot until that happened. But we keep pushing forward, and we learn a little bit more about culture, and we try to make sure that we're open so people can understand who we really are and then become receptive to who they really are. So I've learned a lot about the John Deere culture that I never knew about before.
Yeah, I think the hardest work I've ever done is community economic development work, because communities are very amorphous. It's like trying to work with a hedgehog. It's like it usually many different voices that are not always coherent. So I came home after 30 years away, and I think if I hadn't been from there, it would have been even harder, because small communities and especially rural ones, can be fairly tight in their beliefs. But I think the hardest part was we didn't start with the inn. We started with contemporary art, and with inviting artists to come from very far away who were doing art that is, a lot of it's conceptual, very hard to understand at the first instance. But anyway, finally one man said, well, we don't understand what contemporary art has to do with the price of fish, but we don't think you came home to make things worse. Which was, I think, a kind of way of saying, okay, we're going to go with you on this, like we're going to trust you on this. And, and we also didn't aim low. Like, we aimed to be one of the best inns on the planet. And we are regularly voted, well, certainly the best one in Canada by a country mile, and among the top in the world. And so for Fogo Islanders, it's like, well, we've never actually stayed in an inn, much less run one. So how on earth is this possible? So I think getting people to see that the value of what they have and who they are is the hardest part of it. And, this life is a rhythm of opposites. Things that look like contradictions are just paradoxes. Just live with that. That's okay. Keep moving forward.
For sure. In both of your presentations, the commitment to community certainly is evident, and your success. I know that there are times where commitment to community can sometimes pose a problem as well too. And I think like sometimes when we have these like public conversations, like I mentioned earlier, it can seem like, these things were, like they just happened. Mm-hmm. And I think that, sharing, if you have some incidents about like intentionality, specific to something, and, like those pain points where you have to make a decision and the bottom line is not necessarily the best trajectory for that decision. Are there particular moments throughout your practice where you felt that that was the most challenge, and then the success of that, how that translates to now, and then how you're able to like say, this was certainly the right decision and this was the right way to think about this?
Yeah, I would say, if you remember from the map of Fogo Island, there are 11 little communities, and they didn't, over all these centuries, get along with each other.
Oh.
So, that exactly. And that was because, not that we were different races or we had even come from different parts of the world, we were just different Christian religions. So, some were Catholic and some were Anglican, but we might as well have been from different planets in the way we treated each other. And so the hardest decision was where to put the inn. Because nobody saw, oh yes, we had 5 different town councils and 5 different mayors for 2,500 people. So I had to go around and talk to all these town councils. And in the end, so we had to go somewhere. And trying to get past this, well, that's just for the people from that community. It's like we're talking like 10 kilometers away. We're not talking like from here to Florida or something. Anyway, but I think it all took, I'm a big fan of poetry, and Seamus Heaney's great line, he said, if we can find the words, maybe we can find the way. And so we chose the spot, lots of, and okay, I should say, the spot happened to be near the community that I grew up in. Which really happened because it was kind of the only spot. But in any event, the sentence that helped us find our way was realizing and saying, we are one economic community and we are 11 different cultural communities. And as soon as people kind of hoisted that on board, and then of course we started hiring and people came from all of the communities, it kind of went away. But there were times in that I thought, oh, what am I doing? My life would be so much easier if I just didn't even try to do this.
Yeah. I think for me, the greatest challenge in that respect would be, because I'm a woman of color, people think, oh, but I'm not, so I guess I can't stay there. And that drives me crazy. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally, I have spoken or someone has seen me somewhere and they say, oh, I saw it, it looks lovely, you sing lovely. Now, I'm not black, is that okay? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Is your money green? That's the question we should be asking. So, you know, we welcome everybody. And it's unfortunate because I go everywhere and I never say, well, I'm not white, can I go there? I mean, there was a time where I would have to ask that question. Other people have never had to ask that question. Why is that question being asked? Because I am who I am. And so that's really tricky. And so, you know, when I was editor-in-chief at Essence, I mean, we had to play the same game. It was difficult because even though we had all black female readers primarily, then we got into skin shade. No. Well, wait, we had 3 covers with dark-skinned women. Wait a minute, let's get a light-skinned lady. Oh, no, wait a second. Okay, and that is very frustrating for me because I really want to see people as people. And I have colleagues who own inns and they will allow someone else to be the owner, if you will. And that's problematic for me, you know? And I don't know, I struggle with that. It's like I'm not going to hide who I am. I'm not going to dim my light. And I'm going to shine a light so that all of us can be seen for who we are. So we're welcoming everybody.
For sure. Can either of you share like the role of art in your projects and in your spaces now?
Well, we just
that's
opened,
everything for you
yes,
guys.
It is a really important part of what we do because we have an art gallery in the inn, and we try to do at least 3 new shows a year. So we have a show now by a fantastic artist named Abba Sakaba, which is a conceptual piece that has to do with, well, has to do with a lot of things. It has to do with nature. It has to do with worship, all in a piece that involves water in the gallery, which makes us all very nervous from an insurance point of view. Okay. like water in the inn is very concerning. And you know, people come in to see the work, and artists give talks in the cinema, and so it's kind of just a part of the whole. But we don't have art in any of the rooms or anywhere else. There's not a single thing on any wall.
That's interesting because I guess I would say something similar for me. It's I don't feel smart about art. I know what I like. I could never be as eloquent about it as you were when you showed those slides of those exhibits. I struggle with art. I used to think that it needed to match my furniture. I'm just being candid here. I struggle with art because my husband decided that he is an artist.
Yes.
And so, what? It's true, right? So he's an art. So he's painting, and he's got all of this artwork, and there's a little tension because he doesn't understand why I don't have it on the walls at the ends. So I'm working through the art thing, and so really, you know, it is for me in the ends. It's about the art of living that I'm consumed with. I'm consumed with, you know, are people being their authentic selves when they're there? How do we help them do that? It's a different way of looking at art. So I don't have art in the walls because the few times I used to have in our Regal Retreat room a very handsome portrait of a gentleman back probably in the 30s. And far too often I would come in the room and they would be turned around. And I don't know if sometimes people think that it takes your spirit. I don't know what they were thinking, but it troubled them. So I just, you know, I'm still playing with how to do the art thing.
And it's hard to choose art for
It's
someone
hard to
you
choose
don't know.
art.
And then you're
Yeah,
going
I
to sleep
don't-
with it, I mean, on the wall, but.
Yeah,
yes.
but you know, I may create you know, I don't know, some private gallery for my husband's work.
Okay.
Figure out how to do that.
Excuse me. So I think I'll put in one more question before we go to the audience, or one more thing you can share. What interesting ways have people used your respective properties in ways that you didn't expect? Because it's always interesting to see like people using Eden, DC in ways that just had no idea. It's like, wow, somebody would do that.
So we don't have a lot of kind of public space where people can come in and do programming. We are still trying to figure out, we do at Kwanzaa fairs and things like that. What has become really popular for our space is for independent films. Especially if they're period pieces, and not just independent. Tomorrow I go back and Warner Brothers is shooting a new television show at the Brooklyn location, a whole scene. They're making the inn look like a nursing home, and which is pretty interesting. And so I've had to move people to guests that were already booked to a couple other spaces to stay. But Warner Brothers made it worth my while to do that. Okay. And so, we find that that's it. But we're constantly, we stayed at the Eaton last night, my daughter and I, and we're inspired by what you've been able to do there. We're inspired by what you're doing on Fogo Island, and we're going, is there, because I love what you talk about, belonging. Is there a membership model? Is there some way that we can have a community and programming for the people who live there, who are never going to stay the night? How do we do that? And still not encroach upon the kind of intimate experience that the guest wants to have, because we don't have 200 rooms. We only have 4 in Brooklyn. Throughout all of our properties, I have 40 rooms. But Brooklyn, we only have 4 because we actually live in the store. So we are innkeepers. You live with us. We live on the top floor. I cannot get my husband to move. So. Therefore, we can never have the 14 rooms that we could have if we weren't hogging up all the top floor for our own living. But that's where we are.
Well, we set out to, because we built this, we set out to make a piece of contemporary architecture that would cross a chasm in one easy leap. Like, we knew this was kind of a moonshot to get this right, so we wanted to create a building that carried the past, carried the vernacular architecture, but was exceptionally contemporary and something that you couldn't miss. And you can't miss that building. Yeah. And so it became a kind of a magnet for everybody interested in architecture. And so in the early years, it took us a long time, but the unexpected was people who want to come and see the building. But meanwhile, others are, we have 29 rooms, and it's, it's a place to retreat and be away. And you don't want to come on your vacation and be away, and 50 people are wandering down the hallway taking pictures of you in your dressing gown.
Exactly.
So we struggled in the early days, especially, to balance that.
Yes.
We get a lot of requests for fashion shoots and all this kind of thing. And of course, then we start looking at what companies are these, and where are these things made, and how do they treat people? And it's like, oh, that's not good alignment. We choose very carefully who we align with. And I think one of the smartest things we did was in the first 2 years, we invited every single family on Fogo Island. This is a question you were thinking about yourself, to come and stay at the inn, because they own the inn effectively through the foundation. And from that we learned a lot. And and not everyone, certainly Fogo Islanders, can't afford to stay at the inn regularly, but now what we do is we have a lottery every year, and I can't remember, what is the lottery ticket, $10 or something, and we put in this lottery a whole bunch of nights to stay at the inn. It's only open to local people to buy, and all the money from the lottery goes to the local school. And so that brings local people to staying as guests.
Yeah, I just thought of one other thing that I didn't expect. So when people pass away and have a funeral, there's a repast. I guess most people are familiar with that, a gathering where people come together after the burial. Well, you can't do a repast in the funeral home because of the embalming fluids. You can't have food. So that has become an unusual use that we didn't anticipate, because we will house the family members who are coming into town for the funeral, and then the repast is hosted at the inn. And so we are partnering with a number of funeral homes who now refer us as the place to have the repast, because it's a warm space. It feels like home. And so they feel comforted in their time of loss to be in the inn. So the repast is big.
It's a good one. In Newfoundland, there's a TV show. There are a lot of very funny TV shows. And this reminds me, one is called Hatching, Matching, and Dispatching. baptisms, weddings, and funerals.
Yeah,
So
it's
we
big.
do them all.
Yeah.
Don't we have parties when we have babies
Yeah,
too?
absolutely. Oh, we do a lot of baby showers.
There we go, hatching, matching,
Bridal
and
showers.
dispatching.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, very big.
I like
Yes.
dispatching. Awesome. Okay, so we say we have time to take 2 questions. I can't see
No, it's hard to
the
see.
audience.
There's somebody right there.
Okay.
Okay, pleasant good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your contribution. I'm very interested in this topic for multiple reasons. Interesting enough, my background is in the sciences, but I'm interested in this space a lot from a technical perspective and a community building perspective. So I know you all mentioned actually a little bit of the people that and the services you've used outside of the front desk and the artwork. I'm wondering, are there any interesting either practitioners or professionals that you utilize deliberately in the building and maintenance of your spaces that people might think might be unusual that you hadn't thought about before? So whether it's like people think, of course, architect, decorator, chef, but are there any other practitioners outside of those that people automatically assume in the hospitality industry that you had to embrace?
Well, we find that a lot of our guests want to just chill when they come, and so spa services are really important to what we do. Our Poconos location is kind of a boutique resort, and we have a 7-room spa on premises, and then there's saunas and swimming pools and all of that we have at that location. But in the other smaller properties, we do a lot of in-room massages, and so we've been partnered with a lot of massage therapists who will come in and do those massage services. We are also doing a lot of programming at the Poconos location just to get people healed and whole. I didn't know that you were a psychotherapist in the past and all of that kind of thing. So we're doing a Caring for the Caregivers retreat, and we have shamed all the family members to send the person who is the primary caregiver for it, grandma or mom or whoever,
exactly.
yes. And so that sold out really quickly, and we'll be doing kind of a circle where we kind of just share and support those folks, and they'll get massages, and we just love on them because they're loving on somebody else all the time, and the caregiver needs care. And so we think about that kind of thing, and I don't think there's anybody that's on a regular basis working at the inn that doesn't kind of fit in our case that standard model for the person who's going to cook, the person who's going to garden, the person who's going to answer the phone.
Yeah, in our case, I think I would say the really important relationships we have are like with our growers on the island. Like the inn, many fancy inns have gardens. We don't have a garden deliberately because there are people on Fogo Island who have lovely big gardens, small farms, however you think about it. And so those are really important relationships, as well as the fishermen, because on any given day you will see somebody up there dropping off fennel or dropping off fish, or this kind of constant coming and going. And also, we don't have a concierge as such. What we have is a community host program. So when people come to the island, included in the price of their stay, is time with a local community member coming to know the place. And so they are not employees of the inn. They're just local citizens that have time or are interested in spending time with people visiting and showing them around. So there's no better way to come to know a place.
Yeah.
You know what?
I think we have.
Oh yes, they are compensated. Yes, they're just not.
Yes,
yeah.
these are good ones. We do have do have an urban garden on the rooftop, so we do have a gardener. One thing that I found out, we have an indigenous shaman practitioner. Because one thing I found out is people use hotels in very unique ways. And there are people who have decided to dispatch themselves from this side. And oftentimes they do use hotels out of respect of family members in their homes.
Gosh, we haven't had that.
So, yeah, we've unfortunately had that happen. And we brought in a shaman to assist in that transition after. So it's like one of those things that it might be common in American hotels, but it's something that I'd heard that people do that quite often.
Wow.
Oh yeah, and then we have a wellness center too that has Reiki and yoga and cupping and things like that as well too. It's not all dark, sorry. So you get one more question?
First of all, this is an absolutely fascinating interview, talk, presentations are phenomenal. And yes, I stayed at Quaba in DC when it first opened. And Morgan students, I am you in 25, 30 years, so keep it going. My question is for Zita. I'm amazed by all of your stories, but I'm wondering, Zita, are there a lot of other organizations and people coming out to kind of replicate your model in other countries and other cities? And I can't help but think about what you did, Monique, in Brooklyn, and how you changed kind of the social landscape, right? With, buying the other buildings and bringing in business owners. So I'm most interested in how can we continue to replicate that kind of process in other urban centers around our nation and around the world.
Well, we certainly certainly in the Canadian context, let's start with that. A lot of communities have followed closely what's happening on Fogo Island because a lot of communities, especially the smaller ones, but it also relates to urban communities. I think about a community as a physical place where people live in some kind of a tangle with each other. And my definition of a community is the distance a human being can walk in a day before dark. And that's pretty much the, so if you're in trouble, if I can walk to you, then I'm of some use to you, so I'm a community member. We want to start, and are sort of at the beginning stages of starting something called a Community Economics Institute. And what we want to do, and we on Fogo Island want to be a contagious example, but there are other communities that we know, and that now I have another example, that we want to bring together all to sort of best practices. I mean, not every community is going to build an inn like we did, and not every community should build an inn, but it's basically the methodology for how to understand what you have, how to understand your assets, how to bring people together around something. And, but it also will be sort of an online platform as well, so that research can be shared, people can be brought together, we'll come to your innkeeper.
Yes,
seminar,
yes.
absolutely. So it's all of these things, but it's to put, I think just to help us all understand what a community is, because I think we've kind of forgotten. We sort of gave up on, I don't know if we gave up on, we just take them for granted, maybe that's a better way. And I think also for companies, there are lots of very large companies in the world that actually do care about the communities they work in, but they maybe perhaps don't know quite how to do it in the best way. And much of the way I think our financial system is organized is on a good day agnostic to communities, and on a bad day it's hostile to communities. And so I think that has to change. So what our ambition is that what we learn and what we pull together from best practice will be of use to policymakers as well.
First of all, I want to say thank you to the audience first, because we have gone over, and clearly enough you have thought this important enough to stay with us. And I want to thank our illustrious conversationalist for having this. I knew I would be touched by this conversation, but I had no idea how deeply and how much and how engaging to see it all come together. And Susan, thank you for giving me a little nugget and trusting me with the cultivation of it. But let's give everyone a hand. So the charge from the Women, Art, and Social Change program is for you to find someone to meet with, to see who you can work with to continue this kind of work, to see perhaps how, if there's ways that you all can continue to talk to each other, to stay in contact with each other. It wasn't my charge, it's a charge that's happened from these conversations that our audience has given us. And so we try to make it easy for you with a few drinks and a few appetizers. We try to make the work easy. So if you would join us in the Great Hall and find a way to to move us from inspiration to impact, and do that with some refreshments, I would greatly appreciate it. And thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.